Hi there, Living Light family. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for subscribing, liking the video, and sharing the video so that it helps others along the way. Today I'm reading for you The Angel of Power and Authority. Before we focus on the particular angel that is responsible for the generation of power, permit me to discuss how critical it is that we let go of the lower nature and move into the higher realm of consciousness. I will begin by commenting briefly on the awkward ones, those men and women who have realized their inherent powers and who have awakened from the sleep of humanhood, whom Jan and I have had the pleasure of meeting. Each encounter was a profound experience, for we found ourselves discussing everything from angels to Zadokun, a Jewish term meaning those whose power is complete over mind and matter. So, some were men, most were women. They were up in years by earthly standards, and their appearances were both young and ancient. If you were to see one on the street, which you probably have, his or her face and figure would not have flagged your attention, but something else would have. That something else is the awesome power that you feel radiating from them and the sense of authority that they exude. You do not pick this up just by looking at them. However, what you see may be a nice lady or a gentle, unassuming man, and an encounter would find you absolutely no trace of arrogance, vanity, or pretense. Yet there is a feeling of being close to an intense radioactive force, in proximity to a cosmic power source. What is it that makes these people different? They have reached a high point in consciousness, where they have realized that they of themselves are nothing, have nothing, and can do nothing. In essence, they have moved into a different state of mind, where the divine overdrive is in operation. That loving, propelling energy of God's will, purpose, and power that flows through to appear visibly as the fulfillment of every need. How did they reach this level? Through a conscious decision to leave ego, domination, and rise into the reality of spiritual consciousness. This divine consciousness is not something that we have to create out of a personal sense of being. We do not disassemble and remake ourselves in the image of God. We are already that perfect image, so our function is to arise and come to ourself. And in this rising up in consciousness, we may see with inner vision a door leading to the secret place. That door is within us, and it has also been called the eye of the needle because it represents too small an opening for the bloated ego to pass through. But Jesus told us how to get through it. Get rid of everything that is possessing you. Until we do, the entrance is blocked by your own personal accumulation of human nature. We must slim down in consciousness, which means transforming ourselves by giving up the lumpishness of fear, the obesity of guilt, and the heaviness of judgment, and the plumpness of pride. To understand this process, let's look at the story of a man called Adam. No reference to the biblical character. Adam had been on a spiritual path for years, but he seemed to be traveling mostly through the valleys. There were a few hills now and then where he caught glimpses of the kingdom, but in spite of his warm and wonderful meditations, he was still dodging the arrows of third-dimensional living. Then one day, not realizing the downward slope of his journey, he found himself in a deep ravine, and an arrow found its mark, and another, and then another. The arrows did not kill him, they just made him suffer. One came from the bow of insufficiency, one from the string of an unkept promise, another from the deadly aim of a spiritual pride. This was not the first time in his spiritual life that his vulnerability had been exposed. but it was the last as far as he was concerned. It was a now or never situation, and he chose the former. He went into meditation and rose to the higher plane and found himself before the narrow opening leading into fourth dimensional consciousness. He stood before that door, and in his meditation he called for the holy fire of spirit to burn away the dross. Then he reached deeply into mind and heart to bring forth every feeling of guilt ever experienced, to be cast upon the fire, continuing until every last vestige of that insidious emotion was turned to ash. And he was guiltless, but the arrows continued to fly. Next he tackled fear, and every insane scenario his mind could produce was released to the love of God, to be dissolved and rewritten by the infinite thinker or God. Finally he felt invulnerable, as all forebodings and apprehensions had been removed from consciousness, and he was fearless, but the arrows continued to fly. He then called on the light of remembrance, and he meditated on the glory and the grandeur of the master self he was in truth, a holy one of God. The threads spun by ego slowly began to unwind in the light of the presence, and the idea of his divine identity was impressing upon consciousness, but the arrows continued to fly. Then one day, perhaps out of desperation, he tried to crash through the opening, but found it impassable. He fell to his knees and cried out, "What else would you have me do?" And the voice said, "Love the least among you as you do your holy self, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might, for the selfhood is invisible. This is my commandment, and a second one follows. Commit your mind to God. Surrender your spirit to the Holy One within, and the crucifixion will be finished." Adam obeyed and searched his mind for all those whom he considered less or least in consciousness, those who had been difficult to forgive, those who had attacked him in the past, everyone he had ever judged as living in the shadows and not fulfilling their potential, even those with a seemingly animal nature who were wreaking havoc on planet Earth. He began to love them all with the adoring intensity that had once been reserved for only the holy self within, and soon he felt a bonding with all souls, and the sense of separation dissolved into wholeness. Now he was ready for the final act. Vividly imagining himself on the cross of the third-dimensional world, secured with the nails of human beliefs, deeply buried in the unconscious chambers of mind, he readied himself for the moment of transition. He began to give up everything that had possessed him in this world, and everything that he had possessed, including all the truth he thought he knew, taking a complete inventory of his life, the past, present, and future, the good, the bad, and indifferent. He surrendered all, even those who love he treasured with every breath. After every person, place, and thing in the phenomenal world had been released, it was time for the final commitment. In a matter of moments, he gathered all the energy, force, and power that could be drawn into consciousness, and then he spoke those mystical words of total release. "Father, unto thy hands I commit my spirit." It was done, and in Adam's vision he saw the cross vanish instantly, and the wall of separation was torn in two from top to bottom. And he walked into the light, and there were no arrows. There was only deep silence. There was a difference between the old Adam and the new Adam. Before, everything depended on his own understanding of truth, on the right thoughts that he had to be held in consciousness in order to be outpictured. Even though he had felt the presence within, he still believed he had the responsibility for working out his own salvation, for discovering the truth that would set him free from the problems he perceived in his personal world. There was always a search for that missing key that would unlock the doors to the Father's storehouse of all good. But now a shift in mind and heart had taken place. Through the ultimate surrender, Adam had placed his consciousness under the dominion and authority of the Holy Self within, that point of power embodying the will of God, the vision of Christ, and the creative activity of Spirit. The presence of God was now able to think, feel, and act through him, and he began to understand what the will of God was already done. That is what is seen in the mind of the divine self, and that it was being carried forward into manifestation by the outpressing of Spirit. His function now was simply to be of one accord with his divine process. But Adam's new mode of living as a spiritual being did not mean a retirement from life, for his beingness included functioning in a material world with a physical body. Although the responsibility for the activities taking place in that world were no longer his alone, his true work of living in the light was just beginning. He quickly learned that he was not able to make any decisions or plans, nor was he to be emotionally involved with anything taking place around him, particularly those situations that appeared as pressing needs. He was simply to understand that God's will had been done, and that the vision of that will is being expressed. He was told to be a beholder of God at work while seeing every requirement for physical living being met easily and quickly, and knowing that everything was whole and perfect in his life, thus cooperating with the grand thinker's thoughts that were manifesting through him. His guidance was also to speak less and relax more, to be lovingly detached, and above all, to practice harmlessness at every moment. Of equal importance, he was told, was to live the identity of the divine self, and all that I am represented, to identify with wholeness, abundance, and complete fulfillment in every area of life, and to do this with joy, thanksgiving, enthusiasm, and imagination. In the process of letting the present live and move and have its being in and through him, Adam was aware that decisions continued to be made and plans formulated and implemented, but they took on the nature of spontaneity, and he knew that he was being used as a vehicle for mind action taking place on a higher level of his being. He could feel the power moving through him, and he sensed the words of authority emanating from deep within, words that were reshaping his world without any conscious thought from him. It was as though the cosmic forces of the universe were throbbing, pulsating, and expressing through his energy field. But he understood that this was not an activity of his personality, and this understanding protected him from the condescending and self-serving traits that accompany a sense of personal power. By letting go of the lower and moving up to the higher, the angel of power and authority has been freed. The divine power and authority cannot operate through a consciousness totally mirrored in third-dimensional energies. But without that causal force, we have no dominion in resurrecting our individual worlds from the insane destruction of the ego. When we move to the point of the ultimate surrender and make the final commitment, the door to the fourth dimensional consciousness is blown away, and we are in our rightful home on earth. And at that moment, the gate of power, represented by this angel, swings wide open, and our God Self has a clear channel through which to make all things new. In ancient wisdom, this guardian at the gate of power and authority in each individual's energy field was called Jehovah by the Hebrew mystics and the Rosicrucians, Osiris by the Egyptians, and Hercules by the Greeks. In traditional Jewish literature, Jehovah is portrayed as the God of Israel, the supreme deity, but the Kabbalists and later some Gnostics believed that Jehovah was the power of creation in the phenomenal world under the direction of spirit. The early Rosicrucians thought of Jehovah as the Lord of the material universe, the one responsible for our physical existence. Osiris represents the material aspect of the sun, which vitalizes the earth, and Hercules is symbolic of the incarnated, yet not perfected, Son of God, whose power transmutes the lower nature to reveal individual identity. This was the angel of the kingdom, whose authority clears the channel through which spiritual energy can flow. In the tarot, the religious symbolism of ancient Egyptians, this angel is portrayed as the emperor, the great king of the inferior world and the archetype of dominion. The emperor is the consort of the empress, the angel of abundance, and works closely with her in bringing the divine thought forms into manifestation out of her reproductive energy. As an agent of the presence of God within, he controls the energy vortex through which the radiatory and magnetic powers converge, and if not blocked by ego projections, these are released to fulfill the divine purpose. This angel's positive attributes, as expressed by an individual, are vigor, vitality, and strong decisiveness, with reliance on the will of God in every situation. If blocked by spiritual pride, however, the person is arrogant, vain, condescending, and pretentious. Astrologically, this angel is represented by Aries, which is ruled by Mars. Aries is the zodiacal sign through which the cosmic power reaches planetary life, and according to the Tibetan Dual Kul, the Aries energy, which compromises the life force of this angel, enables the individual to express the will to be and do, unfold the power to manifest and enter into battle for the Lord, and arrive at unity through effort. And in Meditations on the Signs of the Zodiac, John Jocelyn writes, Aries is a sign of male power, and it pushes one forward into positions of power through the pioneering of new fields and purposes. Here do we find the quality of initiative. The most evident trait of Aries is intense activity, fired by ambitions, projective energy, which must take command. Aries purifies thinking and raises thought power, compelling correction and advancing toward truth. The essence of Aries is the urge that impels persons to new ideas, plans, thoughts, or proposals. At the beginning of this chapter, I talked about the awesome power that you feel when in the presence of an awakened soul. That power is the force of fourth dimensional consciousness. It is the strength of Jehovah, the authority of the Emperor, and the power to be of the Aries energy, all of which radiate from the angel of power and authority. This holy helper strengthens the will to serve the divine plan and provides the power to carry you over the obstacles of life. Once free of ego projections, this angel becomes the inner authority to control the ego, and your life is then ruled by a spiritual power from within. And this radiation of power from on high is what you feel when you meet an individual with an illumined consciousness. For our meditation, let's work with the atom example. Knowing that as we arise and come to ourselves, the ego's grip on the angel of power and authority is broken, and the channel is cleared for the free-flowing of the kingdom. Become quiet and still as you contemplate the presence within, and let yourself be taken to that high plane in consciousness where you see the narrow opening leading into the fourth dimension. Follow Adam's initiation into the light by allowing the holy fire to burn away the dross. Review your life and expose all the guilt you have ever experienced and cast it upon the fire of spirit. Then bring into consciousness every fear that has plagued you in the past and the ones that are rising up to haunt you now. Bring them all up and release them to the love of your master self to be dissolved. Once this is done, begin to ponder the truth of you, the shining radiance of your divine consciousness, the very presence of God individualized as you. See the light and feel the love, and return that love with all the feeling you have. Now you are ready to search your mind for all those whom you have considered less or least in the human family. As each one comes into focus in your mind, begin to love them with the same feeling that you have loved the presence of God within you. Keep pouring out the love with great intensity and watch as each human face and form is transformed into light. Continue until you feel bonding with the entire selfhood of God, that infinite circle of light, embodying every soul on this side of the veil and beyond. In preparation for the final and ultimate surrender, begin to release everything in your life without exception. Every person, everything that has ever possessed you, and all that you have possessed, leaving nothing out. When you have emptied the shelves of consciousness and nothing remains, gather your energy into a mighty force and speak aloud the mystical words, "Father, unto thy hands I commit my spirit." Your crucifixion will be over, and you will find yourself in the kingdom of light. Now you will want to visit the angel of power and authority, an angel worth knowing, respecting, and loving. Ask him what you can do to help maintain control of the ego. Listen to his constructive ideas and write them in your journal. You might also tell him to strengthen your resolve to stay firmly on the spiritual path and to alert you if spiritual pride begins to develop in the lower chambers of consciousness. And remember, this is the angel of enthusiastic action that can propel you forward to achieve even the most impossible dream.